Welcome everyone, episode 5 of the Geometric View. Thank you for being here. Please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notification. Let me start the episode here. Welcome to the Geometric View. We have a special episode today. We have David here, David Brown, right?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Just double checking. And David Brown, he's very influential in the electric universe culture, and as an experimentalist and as a narrator, but as many other things. But what this episode is about today is about this article that he discovered, and I've been dying to try to get to the bottom of this because I tried to email this dude, and the email came back to me. Apparently, the file's since been scrubbed from the internet or something. Tell us this wild story about this paper you found, please, David.
Sure. I obviously am into anything dealing with electricity and the electric universe theory, and I was researching. I'm not actually sure what I was researching. Something dealing with the Saturn hypothesis, and my research for years has been right alongside with the electric universe theory. So again, somehow I came across the video, which is posted online. It was a very small, looking at the comments within this video, and actually my buddy Greg J, I saw he commented on it saying, hey, the link you provided is broken. And somebody else provided one of those, it wasn't the Wayback Machine, it was some other sort of web logging page that had a record of these files, and I was able to snag the file of this paper that I narrated in regards to the polygonal crater formations by electrical discharges. And it was just one of the most fascinating reads to me, because I've been studying electric universe geology for many years now, and I have always thought that if not most or all of the craters that we see on our planet and on the moon and on all of the other bodies in the solar system were formed by electricity, not necessarily by impact, as what the mainstream science community accepts as the truth. So when I found this paper, it was an amazing outline and modeling of the lightning bolt and how a lightning bolt counter rotates, and it's all based upon Donald Scott's model of a Birkeland current. And after I read this paper, it was one of the most compelling and convincing proofs of anything I've read so far. So I also have been trying to get a hold of this guy or find him elsewhere online, and I don't know where he's at, if he's even still alive. The last I saw from him was in 2016. So
Can you repeat the title of it? Because I'm trying to find. I'm just going to type in EU eyes on YouTube. That's the best way, probably.
Yeah. The paper. So the paper itself is from. It's part of a journal, and it's from the NCGT Journal, Volume 3, Number 2, from June 2015, and it has a bunch of different authors' papers within one publication. So his starts on page 158, and it's called Polygonal Craters Formed by Electrical Discharges by Wayne Byrne. So that is the owner, or the author of that paper. Let's see here. It was published in the NCGT, called an International Journal for New Concepts in Global Tectonics. And that website is ncgt.org. And when I go directly to that site, I have a tough time trying to find that particular publication. Mm-hmm. What I'll do is I'll scour the internet and save PDFs when I come across it, and I try to save the website links, but they don't always work when I go back. So let's see.
Well, I'm glad you preserved this, because this is extremely important. And when I seen it, I was like top 10 immediate favorite videos that I've ever seen. Yeah. Just depending on my electrical or electrical knowledge, limited electrical knowledge, and geometric knowledge that I have. And I was just immediately taken back, and I've been trying to get to the bottom of this. So please, I'll let you continue talking about it. Some of the mysteriousness about this article here. Here is where you can find it. Here's the channel, the lead. It was posted January 4th by you yourself. Well,
Yes, sir.
this is a different channel, so I'm subscribed to you on other channels. I have like 3 different channels. So now I'm subscribed to you on at least 2 different platforms. Anyway.
Excellent.
Yep. That's a
Well,
cool thing about starting new emails and stuff. You can probably start limited amounts, unlimited amounts, and then like all your stuff from all your other accounts.
Well,
I got 1 million likes.
That's awesome.
But I'll let you continue talking about how crazy this is. So wherever you want to take it, tell us, please.
Sure, man. I guess what it, how this starts out is him talking about the Z pinch and going into the, how a Birkeland current is the basis of a lightning bolt, and how he models it out based upon some graphics that he received from Donald Scott. There was another gentleman that helped him out throughout the paper, and I don't recall his name right off the bat. I would have to go back and look who that person is. First time I heard of that guy. But his baseline is from Donald Scott and Wallace Thornhill, so all of their work. So apparently this guy's been following them or working with them for quite some time. So I had never heard of Wayne Byrne before, but when I came across it, I wondered, why haven't we heard about this guy? Even on the Thunderbolts project or Space News, I haven't ever heard of this gentleman. So if anybody else has and has any further information, publications from this gentleman, I certainly would love to receive it. So if you're listening to this,
I'm kind of interested also. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. If anybody can find this guy, please let us know about this guy's information. It kind of seemed like a farce article because of the name of some of the people that were referenced, or there was another guy, and his last name's Byrne too, so it could be an alias.
Yeah.
Not that it's a farce article, but like, it's weird because it came out in June 2015, and when did Donald Scott model or release his model in 2015?
I think it was about the same time.
They must have been back to back almost,
Yeah, and he's got to know Donald Scott and Wallace Thornhill. So,
right.
Because he gives credit to them working with him and providing. I mean, he even says it in his paper that Donald Scott directly gave him his models of the Birkeland current, which is featured in this video. And this paper is baseline off of Donald Scott's work, right?
Yeah.
And the expertise by Thornhill as well as this third gentleman, which again I don't recall his name. But what really fascinated me is, I'm part of the Electric Universe Geology group, and I've been trolling Google Earth for years now. And every time I come across a crater or a mountain range or anything, there's always circular momentum in there. And there's always some sort of vortex movement that I see. And, if anybody's a fan of Andrew Hall, which I know you guys are, but those listening have heard of any of the Andrew Hall stuff, this just painted even more of a visual towards how these crater formations could be made by a lightning bolt model. And I'll say what really did it for me is, I've got a little laboratory I built in my garage. In the third bay, I've got a desk with high voltage transformers, which thanks to you, buddy James, inspired me to get the balls to do that myself. And I've been doing that about a year now. And I have created craters that look just like Meteor Crater, for example, or the Barringer Crater. And I've used the digital microscope to watch close range, and then also just with my own eyes. It's different when you're watching this thing in person, not on camera, but you can see how the arc discharge moves and rotates, and it's generally in one direction, but it's not. You can see the counter rotations within the main discharge, and you'll have filaments coming off and wrapping around it. And it's how it moves is it's it's alive to me, is how I see it. And
Yeah. It's a circuit trying to complete itself in the most efficient manner.
yeah,
It's a loop. Like it's always trying to seek a loop,
yep.
no matter what type of charge it is. It's trying to complete it. So it makes sense that these counter rotating plateaus, platforms, platitudes, disks, collimated configurations are formed.
Mm-hmm. The fascinating thing to me is actually seeing his model that you just showed there of the lightning bolt and the counter rotation. When having a graphic visualization of somebody describing it scientifically, that matches what I see with my own eyes and don't quite know how to articulate it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is exactly what I see.
Right.
And in the, so there's another, let's see. What he gets into is how there's two different types of lightning bolts that he's modeled out. And one
Yeah.
is going to be there you go,
Yep.
HCP, or the hexagonal close packing, versus the cubic close packing. So when it's a much higher charge and of electricity, it tends to form that hexagonal packing, versus if it's a weaker charge, it's that cubic close packing, and there's more repulsion, so it's weaker. And generally, where you have those blue, the square center where it's blue, he calls those corner posts. And there are many craters, especially you can go and look on Mars, and there are craters that have 3 to 4 centralized corner posts. There's the same features found in some of the craters underneath the ocean on the ocean floor. And some of the craters around, even on Earth or other planets, or the moon, have that same central corner posts. And it's an octagonal shape with one long side, a short side, and repeating long, short, long to make that octagonal shape. So if it's a lower focus of energy, you're going to get that octagonal shape with the center posts. If it's a high focus of energy, that hexagonal shape is going to appear. And I look at that model figure 3, and I see even the North Pole of Saturn, right? Or I see one of the poles of Jupiter with its huge cyclones going around each other. So it's a matter of, is the charge on the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere, and which direction is the main current entering and exiting. Even though it's technically going in and out both ways, there's going to be a focus of energy on one side or the other. And I'll share that the video I'm working on is fully in support of this, which is a presentation he did 1 year after he published this paper. And his model, he's basically modeling the Sun-Jupiter system with the Saturn polar configuration system, and modeling the Birkeland currents of both systems and how they interacted and transgressed to merge together, and the whole genesis of biblical records, ancient scripture, all of the world mythologies. And it's a step-by-step transgression of, I'll just say, for example, in biblical terms, from the Old Testament to the New Testament, and how it got that way. And it's quite fascinating.
This gentleman
gentleman
did a presentation.
He did a presentation. Let's see here.
Could you possibly find that link and share it? Unless you're working on material right now and you're trying to do something with it, then that's understandable.
I've been working on it all week.
Okay.
And so I'm going to reference the original presentation, which was held somewhere over in Europe. But again, he's got a very thick accent, so it's hard to follow. It was hard for me to follow. I had to watch it a couple of times the first time. And I spent this past week It was like a 41-minute presentation, but it took me, if I was sitting down straight, about 4 hours just to transcribe it. And then I've captured all of the images, and I'm going to put it all together, and it's probably going to end up being about 30 minutes, but
Nice.
with my narration. So it's going to be very easy to digest, and I hope to publish that by the end of this next week. So
Yes.
I'll share it. And if anyone has watched this video, that next video is going to make a lot of sense on how it works and how very plausible the two star system merging, the Sun and Saturn system merging, is absolutely plausible. And I'll give you one hint. The Squatter Man, we've always wondered, where is the Squatter Man come from, and how is that identified in history? And I first think of the Dogon tribe, because in their worship, they still have, or in their ritual dance, there's still a section of people in their dance that wear the Squatter Man headdresses.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's a section of dance that is wearing different headdresses, which really more aligns to the Saturn, Venus, Mars configuration, which we see, the Aztec gods and all of these different things happening. So I guess what I am saying is the northern hemispheric cultures saw the Saturn configuration, and more of the southern hemispheric cultures saw the Squatter Man. And that's something I've been trying to wrap my head around for years on when and where did all of these things come up. Anthony Peratt's paper cleared up a lot of things about the positioning and what hemispheric view, all of these petroglyphs were carved in the side of rock, right? And they all align with a certain direction in the sky. And what this gentleman is presenting in this next narration I'm about to publish is that those at the North Pole that saw the Saturn configuration, or Santa Claus, or whatever you want to call that deity, Saturn or Kronos, or Odin, Zeus's father, or I'm sorry, Thor's father, same thing. What had happened was there was a story, and you guys have probably heard it, where, and I'll even go into biblical terms, when in the Bible it says God created two lights, one to rule the day and one to rule the lesser night, right? And that lesser night sun would have been Saturn, or that light would have been Saturn, in my opinion. And the sun would have been for the daytime. So after the plasma sheath was broken by Jupiter engaging with Saturn's system, all of a sudden that purple star then became a bright glowing star, but it wasn't as powerful as the sun, right? But then all of a sudden the Earth could see now the sunlight being cast onto the crescent. So everyone in the northern hemisphere could now see Saturn lit up, or more yellow than it was when it was a darker purple. That also gave precedent to the southern system, or the southern hemispheric cultures, seeing, before they could tell it was the sun, it looked like the Squatter Man. Because I would imagine if Earth is much farther away in this configuration, still rotating about the sun, but we're at a much greater distance, that we would see something more that would look like a sundog, but much further away. So we would actually see the torus wrapping around the sun if we were at that great distance. So what I am speculating at here, and kind of leading on that I think this next narration is going to reveal, is that while like at one point in time, the northern hemispheric cultures that were used to seeing Saturn and this polar configuration, and Mars descending down to Earth, and Venus, the mother goddess, that was the crown and the beautiful star and all of this. When those systems merged, at some point in time, Jupiter became more prevalent as our star, and at some point in time, I think the Earth actually twisted and tilted along with everything else that was in that configuration. And there's some really good things that are going to come out in this next narration that's going to describe at what point in time, which was towards the end, did Venus start to rule and start to have all of this destructive effects after bringing all kinds of good things after the Golden Age, right? At some point in time, some of these cultures finally started to see that squatter man. And that's why it's prevalent in all of these petroglyphs that, you know, I've gone out hiking at many places and looked at walls just full of petroglyphs, and there are tons of symbols on there. And I've seen both the crescent wheel alongside a squatter man. And I've seen a squatter man right in the middle of all of these other petroglyphs. And I've just been trying to figure it out. But it obviously has taken the work of many, and me kind of being obsessive about this, comparing all things. So that's I don't know, I'm rambling maybe. I don't know.
Well, you got off into an interesting topics, and definitely geometric, and signs in the heavens, and also reverberated on rock that we possibly saw these things in the skies. You touched into quite a bit, but if I could pull it back into some of this, the actual structure of electricity, lightning, charge, Birkeland currents. There is geodesic. There is geodesics here, and crystalline lattice or quasi-crystalline lattice formations of Birkeland currents. I've been looking for some information to back up. Well, I guess when Don Scott saw the Dougherty set and he knew what it was immediately, that was enough validation. But this adds to so much more of the construct of the interior detail, because there is a counter rotation. There is a geometric crystalline lattice type structure and formation of charge.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about how when charge is organized in this fashion, there's no limit to the amount of power. It's basically, it can be infinite. And that,
yes,
correct?
I believe it is absolutely scalable.
Yeah.
I got home last night and there was a huge storm brewing here in the Dallas area, and I went out for a run real quick and came back home, and on my way home saw one of the largest lightning bolts just come right in front of me, and what I saw kind of aligned with this, and it's making me think of these experiments I'm doing in my lab, and there's one I have for reference is have you seen that clay ball that I made a crater on?
A bunch of them, yes. You work on quite a few different ones. Which one are you speaking of?
I think I titled it Electric Impact Crater on my channel, and
okay,
you can see how it forms. I put it in slow motion there, but what it does is hollows out that inner portion of a hexagon and explodes it out, and then it rotates around the outer edge of the rim and explodes that out again. So it's a weaker charge on the secondary, which actually forms an octagonal shape, and it matches the outline. I don't have a very good image of it. I blew it up digitally, and it's kind of blurry when I blew it up digitally, but I take that outline of the crater that was left over in that video, and I overlaid it to Meteor Crater, and it's the same outline, the same octagonal outline on a much smaller level. Yeah,
I'm going to it right now.
Sure.
So what you're describing is like a pressure differential. So when the pressure becomes too great because the charge becomes large, then the four posts in the center compress into a single post, and therefore the rotation around, instead of being square because it's hitting corners, is now become hexagonal or octagonal because it's rounding out a corner of the lesser number of, so one circle in the middle, and then you have two circles on each side of that, and then three circles on each side of that, and it's kind of causing a counter rotation because it's forcing the pressure around a bend, as opposed to stacking it in a square around it. Am I
Yeah,
Seeing what you're
yeah,
saying, right? Am I interpreting this correctly? Okay, I'm just
I
making sure I'm
that's
catching what I'm.
exactly it.
Yep.
Let me
Here, I'll see
So
if I
say
if
the
it's
pressure difference.
if there's a pressure difference like this might be the static uh, a charge that something accumulates, even all
Yeah.
the way up to the point of St. Elmo's fire. This electrical formation
Well,
where
right,
it can
because
start
the
glowing.
force. Right.
Yeah. So
Okay, because the
this
force
is
is
how charge
stability.
builds. Yeah.
You said static. So I'm just trying to keep up with the conversation and make sure that I'm understanding what everybody's saying, and then like the visual interpretation of what you're if the visual interpretation matches the what I'm hearing and what I'm ingesting. So okay,
Same
so
here.
that makes a
yes.
lot of sense.
So
So
There's
maybe
motion.
could I make a suggestion that maybe even the static electricity and static charge, like I was just kind of hypothesizing with St. Elmo's fire, builds in this structure surface current across the entire body or membrane, like our skin, and then you touch another person or some another object, and this charge separation becomes this for a brief second as it
yes,
arcs
It
over,
becomes
and then it
motion.
comes back to this structure which naturally is neutralizes all over your entire skin, and
Yeah.
it's
So
always
this
there.
stability, the closed cubic pack is the stability, the charge, the zero, right? Because even no matter how great the charge is, if it is zero, it's zero, right? But then once it gets set into motion, the pressure change creates compression, and it becomes this hexagonal or octagonal shape,
Yep, and then it
right?
moves. Yep, and then it moves like this with a filament like structure, nested filaments.
mhm.
And if I could share a couple of drawings, this might be a perfect time here because
All
I
right.
did some work for this show here on some images that I created. Okay, this one particularly. After watching your presentation, I was I started breaking down the actual way how to produce logarithmic scale invariant nest packing of hexagons. And this is like the Dougherty set, but it's a new Dougherty set. It's based off of 6. So you start with the hexagon, you nest the hexagons, um, and basically you circumscribe the nested regular polyhedrons, and they produce different scale concentric dilations like this. And then the dilation pattern is just the outside circumscribed geodesic, and then you scale it outward, and you can see the like the dendrite, the exact geometry of hexagonal packing.
That's beautiful.
And
That's awesome work. If you go to 20 minutes on that video, the polygonal crater formation, 20 minutes shows kind of the direction within the hexagons that I believe that's what I see in your drawings.
mm-hmm.
It's very well done.
Thank you. Yeah, after seeing this, it cemented it in me. I created actually 5 new Dougherty sets. So now I have Dougherty networks and Dougherty sets, because
Nice.
the one that I created, I've been studying for like 17 years, and then I realized that I can create a bunch of different ones that create different octaves and different sets. So 6 nested hexagons produces lightning and charge dissipation, and it goes all the way down to the micro scale. If I could zoom in on it, which I don't know exactly how to do. But anyway, I took it a step further and then took it like and turned it into all sorts of different shapes, and turned them into 3-dimensional, like ball lightning, and
Yeah,
I don't know, all sorts of weird stuff.
that's awesome.
And then I showed with the old Dougherty set, the first one, based up, which is based off of the cube, inverse square. So the lightning is inverse hexagonal. That's what the inverse hexagon is, inverse hexagonal, whatever that is. And this is inverse square. But you can get the same types of geodesic, crystallized, nested formations that dissipate charge and carry charge and information. And I would suggest that neural networks work on the same geometry.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that as well. Buddy, in the chat, I sent you the video that I was referencing of my electric impact crater.
All right.
Which will show you a visual of how I think this is working. And again, in my particular experiment was using alternating current. I'm about to try it again using DC current to see, do I get these exact forms that he's proposing in these in this article by using his methodology, using DC, because he does have in there, whether the ground or the layer, the ground layer is charged negative or positive. So that's something that we see, especially in these storm systems. You're getting a low pressure versus a high pressure, and it's a variation of charge. But I wanted you to see in how it moves when you're in slow motion there, it will start with the center arc and focus for a minute, and then it starts to reach out
and wrap around it.
Right before it pops out that first central portion of the crater, it seems to focus again, and then it spreads out and wraps around. You can see the filaments on the outside while there's still a central charge.
Yeah.
So
double nested layers.
Yeah, and I can't tell.
Have you tried this on hollow spheres? Sorry.
Say again, Heather?
Sorry, Mike. Have you tried this on a hollow sphere?
Not yet, but I could.
Could you try it on a hollow sphere and let's see how it handles differently? Because I feel like when there's whenever there's something like this, it travels all the way through, right? It goes straight through the earth, and how it travels through the earth is the question, but they definitely do. So is the way that it handles, especially if you were doing it on a hollow surface, or the way it goes through it, that might give us some amazing information.
Yeah, you made me think of a gentleman I've been watching for a long time, and he is, in my opinion, one of the best earthquake prediction gentlemen, named Dutch Sense. Have you guys heard of that guy?
Mm-mm.
So
I love Dutch. I
Okay.
have been following Dutch for years. Yes.
So Heather, you'll know this, and Buddy, this gentleman is again, his YouTube channel is Dutch Sense, but he has been.
Could you send it? Could anybody send any of the links just to make the show easier?
Oh yeah.
Just put it right here in this chat, and then I'll compile all of them and put them right in the show.
Sure.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
And I'll find it. But what this guy does is he bases all of the past earthquakes that have taken place, and depending on the depth of the earthquake, if it's a surface level earthquake or it's a deep level earthquake, he can predict where the next earthquake is going to be.
What's his name?
Generally, I'm sorry?
What's his name?
Dutch Sense, S-I-N-S-E. All together, Dutch Sense.
S-I-N-C-E?
There it is, just down.
Yeah, Dutch, S-I-N-S-E. And this he, in my opinion, is the most accurate earthquake prediction person out there.
Done.
I would totally agree with you. He's on it.
Yeah. So generally, when there's certain earthquakes, he will say on the complete opposite side of the globe, he'll pinpoint where he predicts the next earthquake's going to be, and then it happens. So when Heather said, "Can you do this on a hollow sphere?" that instantly made me think of this guy, which I haven't watched.
Oh my goodness!
But this guy's amazing.
Yeah. Mine.
Dang.
Mine. These guys. I can't believe you guys haven't been watching. I don't him just as long as I've been watching anybody else, but he isn't EU. Okay, so so a lot of the community might be unaware of him or have different ideas about. But I mean, look at the monitors. Look what he does, and he does like hour and a half, 2 hour podcasts. So you get a lot of information. I don't mean to interrupt you, David.
Oh no, it's okay.
Go ahead and talk a tiny bit about this guy. I have to turn the chicken soup down.
Sure. So,
Hang on a moment.
let's see here. What is the give me 1 sec. I gotta find something real quick. I know you said talk, but I'm not talking now. How about that? Who is the I forgot the
Okay, I'm back.
goodness. Who is it's on the tip of my tongue, but I don't remember who it is. Who is the official organization that provides earthquake information? USGS?
Yeah, the U.S. Geological Survey.
Yes. So what really fascinated me when I first came across this guy years ago is that the USGS wouldn't have information, but he would be watching these things live as he's predicting where the next earthquake's going to be. And he would go, look, here's an earthquake right here. And the USGS wouldn't publish it. Or they would remove some of the information that they would say, or they would downplay certain things.
That makes sense.
And so what I found very fascinating is, and again, I don't have specifics to share with you, but there have been many times where they have tried to shut him down or have him quieted or have his information removed, to the point to where the software that he's using kind of started becoming a subject matter expert and helping them develop this software, which made it even more accurate than the tools that the USGS has.
Wow.
Or on the flip side, maybe it's just being moderated for the reasons I think we all probably understand.
Yeah, no, totally. They even made a Vice episode to discredit him, saying that like it was causing panic, that these people who were saying that they could predict earthquakes were causing panic in the public, and there was like an outcry. I wrote to the USGS. I went and saw one of the guys at U of M, and I asked him questions, and he became like really like, oh well, we don't study this, nobody's taken this information, and since the 70s there's no precursor. As soon as I used the word precursory indicators, he like immediately shut me down and was like, absolutely not. And then like maybe 2 weeks later, Vice did their like smear campaign against
Is it electric, guys, girls?
I believe so.
Are earthquakes electric? Are they trying to tell us like to stifle the information because of that, or maybe because of bombs and other things?
Or
Underground
because
activity.
of economics. Just good old plain economics.
Okay.
Because it doesn't make economical sense to tell people that the property that has the highest value is actually of the lowest value, and that we should just completely change our infrastructure because we actually know better now. If I mean, it doesn't make economical sense to do that.
So do you think it's a good idea to dig tunnels underneath LA?
Hell no.
Earthquake proof, or quote unquote earthquake proof tunnels underneath LA, like ants, like a ant colony.
Not meet in there and everyone just drown and they fill.
Dude, think of the people that are already occupying the tunnels. They would just occupy the other tunnels more. You know, there'd be more layers to crawl through.
They just want to build that pipeline, that oil pipeline.
Elon Musk. All I can remember from his interview with Rogan was, "I'm going to dig a big pit. I can't say pit enough because pit is like scary and like apocalyptic because the big pit apparently, you know, see the pit. There's a couple of pits referenced throughout the Bible, but their main two are hell, quote unquote hell."
The pit to Hades.
I want to dig a pit.
So I'm pretty fascinated with that, and Heather, I guess you know what, I will say I did attempt when I first got my little electrical rig together. I did take a clay ball and I started off with an open clay ball and filled it with water and then closed in the top and tried discharging to it, but that's before I really figured out what I was doing. But I guess it makes sense to me that you go down, we dig wells to find water. So there is water underneath the ground in certain layers. It makes sense to me that since there's so much water on the surface of the earth, that it could, again, I don't know where is the water under the surface of the earth, but that definitely would create the dielectric barriers between where the water layer is, the earth layer, and then where we're at and the atmosphere above us, and it being as above, so below as far as all of these dielectric layers and step potential, if you will. Right?
On one of these sites, there should be aquifers, because you guys reference a lot of sites. Maybe, Heather, you might know something that shows underground rivers, aquifers.
There's a lot of that, but I don't know any specific map or site to tell you, because I found that they generally are location specific. So like when I was looking for Ireland, when I look for Ireland, I look at Ireland, which is an island, right? So maybe, but I mean, even like specifically for regional spaces in the US, they tend to be like regional specific. So a lot of sites.
You know what, Heather? Man, you keep reminding me of things. Thank you. So I live in Texas, and I've been studying the geology of Texas as much as I can and going out and investigating myself. And I found a lot of geology, and I do have some aquifer maps in Texas, and you just made me think that wherever I remember those aquifers being located is generally where all of these storms brew up. And I also watch the weather, and I watch lots of different types of radar, and it seems like there are areas within Texas that a storm just comes out of nowhere, and all of a sudden moisture combines and it stays stationary. Even though the storm system moves, it seems like it's coming from specific locations, or there's certain areas to where it greatly amplifies. And
so like standing wave storms.
Yeah, essentially. And I've watched storm systems create and then go away. And I've got 2 sky cams on my roof, and I monitor those, and sometimes I'll go and record what it is and then speed it up and post it on my channel. But I've seen the same thing happen over where I live in Dallas-Fort Worth, and the same thing happens. Just clouds will just appear and stay literally in one place and then disappear again. But these storm systems seem like they will start in certain areas of Texas, generally central to West Texas, and they'll spin up and they'll just go kind of northwest usually. Again, I know that there's different layers in our atmosphere that on a global spherical scale, I can see, in my mind anyway, the Birkeland currents coming in at both poles, and how those Birkeland currents wrap around each other very fluidly, more of magnetohydrodynamics. But that also, whatever those charge layers are, affecting what's underneath the ground. So there's certain areas in Texas that has lots of gases, oils. There's half of Texas is a huge pink granite batholith that's sticking out. And there's something called the Edwards Plateau, and a huge part of that is called the Llano Uplift. And it's a much higher elevation than even farther northwest, northeast, where you get to Dallas-Fort Worth. So this Llano Uplift is due west of Austin. And if you could simply look at a map, even just follow the freeways. I-10 coming from the west border of El Paso all the way into San Antonio, and that freeway follows where the edge of this uplift goes, and it's an old ancient fault line, and it goes through up into Austin, and then into Waco, into Dallas-Fort Worth, and then up into Arkansas, before it all kind of wraps back over around and gets to the Appalachians and goes up that way. But all of the geology is very telling to me, and again, I mix a lot of things together because I've been studying so much. So if I get off track, just reel me back in.
Did you happen to catch that 1 year of the weather? It was like a cycle, but it was, you could see it fast forward.
Oh,
it was
yes.
pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's usually following the same tracks.
Yeah. So that could explain one of those central storms, that like a standing storm, like, and it reminded me of like a standing wave or standing storms that are, or standing clouds that are above mountains, you know, that just kind of linger.
Yes.
Like UFOs and don't move.
Yeah, and I am I guess what I even started out with is I have I have an aquifer map. I'll have lots of maps of the geology in Texas, and I am just trying to dig it up because I have a lot of. Let me see if I can share some things with you. And I'll just find it here.
Hey, buddy. Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Do you think the storms coincide with the ley lines at all? Like
I think other people could maybe speak on that. As far as ley lines go, you have to be specific because there's so many different kinds, I think, in my head.
Oh yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I would think there's a positive, negative, and a neutral. But I just think it's worth mentioning considering your electric.
I think that Heather, we were talking about this on the electric view quite a bit, that in upper atmosphere storms and the ground, feed off of each other's charge, and I think create more animals, more living creatures.
Or like you were saying, it completes the circuit of the planet. The ley lines are kind of like the circuit.
Currents. Well, right. And we think of the global electric circuit, and we think of field line currents, and we think of auroras and lightning, and auroras and lightning are field line currents. So when a storm is traveling along, there has to be, that has to be some sort of like interaction between the ground currents and the atmospheric currents.
Just like this video here, you have larger currents on the outside, and they go along with the currents on the ground too. And I call it the electrohydromycelial network, and then Eugene started calling it the ultra deep biome. But we were talking about it for a while on the electric view, and then Eugene started naming it and talking on deeper levels about it, and then realized that there was other papers written about it, which usually there is if you look deep enough, like this this article that we're talking about today, with the patterns of the geometry here.
I feel like we're running on old technology, Flintstones. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of new technology out there that we don't know about, just in Japan. You hop over to a different continent and you're like, wait a minute. I mean, did you see other people's New Year's? There was drones, beautiful drone displays, and all sorts of other tech. What was ours? Ours was like probably fireworks again. They're all like, stupid Americans.
Oh, look at pretty lights.
Hey, like, what was Eugene's hypothesis, buddy? Wasn't he saying something?
Oh, dude.
His latest thing about there being was it?
Well, this is what I was talking about last year, the past couple of years, like a hydromycelial electrical network.
Yeah, that there's like living entities that are affecting and creating charge.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
At the most violent places where we would never expect life to exist, we have extremophiles and bacterias that create scaffolding layers of themselves as they die. And these, from some of the stuff that I got from what he was talking about, is that these scaffolding layers of the self-produced charge and also slip, and that's what produces the it's actually living creatures that the continental shelves are slipping on, which would make sense if you look at the geological records why there's so much oolithic limestone and sedimentary or just living creatures in almost every single scale of different types of rocks that are coming up out of the ground, like they were layered upon by oceans before, but maybe it's just that they're coming up out of the bedrock in different formations. I digressed a little bit there about my own hypothesis, but what I was talking about is the majority of lightning strikes happen in the clouds, cloud to cloud. So there's a brain. I think the clouds are the brain, and it's waiting to find the mycelial networks know exactly what they need. So when they know what they need, they become positively charged, drawing down a lightning bolt to flower and fruit the different types of fungus.
Charge the planet.
Different types of funguses to feed the different types of plants, because it's all about feeding the plants. You got to think about what's feeding the plants. And Heather and I, on the last episode, we were talking about it being made of scaffolds of glass. A
3D printer, I believe.
The plants act like 3D printers of glass, and then reanimate Birkeland currents as different individual phylum of species. And you have the male and female, and they polarize into a head of a helical sexed polarized opposites. That's what we start talking about Walter Russell kind of talk there in poetic speak. And then you start getting into Dan Winter poetic speak with this article that we've been getting in with efficient energy distribution. You have these networks that are looking to eat. Everything's about consuming. So it's phosphorus, or the lightning produces different things like phosphorus and fruits. This is where the idea of morphogenetic fields came from, is from the 30s. Scientists were studying mushrooms and how they all flowered at the same time, like a giant brain that knew what to do. Now I was talking about it a lot on land, and then we started talking a lot together as a group collectively how lightning and charge tends to work towards the outside of the continents and the outside of the continents itself, or just the outside of a body. Charge works towards, and then Eugene started positing that the whole thing is freaking like alive on a deeper level. Yeah, and showing verified proof of it with living creatures down there. But yeah, it seems like I started talking about the more lightning, the more water, the more creatures. Then you look at the Amazon, and it follows suit. The more lightning, the more water, the more creatures. And then I started thinking it was acoustics, and it was very acoustic, something sonobiology, something. The more sound that's created out of the rhythms produce more characters and more creatures. And they're all mimicry on all scales, all the way down, mirroring self-identities, trying to basically self-identify with an image that's higher than them, or an image that is around them, so much so that the insects start to become leaves, the porcupines start to walk around, all sorts of weird creatures, everything. You think it's a leaf, you think it's a branch, you think it's anything, then the tree starts walking, and you're like, what the?
So do you believe in an evolutionary process of geometric sequencing, like layered? You think
Yeah, cyclical.
because my whole thesis is that
the more creatures, the more charge, the more efficient charge distribution, the more complexity, the more
complexity.
the more patterning, the more resonance, the more frequencies, the more creatures are built out of the sounds and out of the necessities of the voids of sound.
And the foundation of which would be, you would say, would you agree that it's like a tortal structure
Oh, absolutely.
type thing?
Yeah. So here, let me pull this up. I shared this earlier with the group.
Yeah,
This is a new piece that I created. This is the new Dougherty Sets, the release of it. The first time I've showed anybody other than Brighton that I've been working with. Um, this is the first one that I designed and how to create it. So the basis here is you start with a regular polyhedron. You nest the regular polyhedron inside of itself. Then you circumscribe the nested polyhedron inside of itself, and it produces different dilation patterns. When using projective geometry on these or pulling them out from themselves in lines or linear progression or dielectric inertial plane of the rope or frequency or vibration that's produced within these dilation patterns, you start to get.
I love the interference patterns you've made. It's
Thank
beautiful.
you. Thank you for mentioning that. This is actually how you get cascade harmonics, interference patterns. You get constructive and destructive interference patterns. And I learned this. I learned this the other day because I've been working with this, and then Brighton suggested that I could do an dodecahedron, and then I remembered that I was like, I could actually do all of them. So you could do this all the way up and produce different cascading modalities. But what I got really interested in is you start to create logarithmic, scalar, and nested wave geometries just by using polyhedra. So what I've done here is I've converted polyhedra into
but on a two-dimensional scale, or?
Well, you can see this on a two-dimensional scale.
Yeah.
But once you radiate them about a center in different radials, you take the group, you copy it, and you paste it around the center. That's what creates the new Dougherty sets. This is how to produce one line of it, but you have to radiate it around the central nucleus.
Yeah, because any shape, like, or
regular
fluctuating shape would have to be three-dimensional. And I think I don't know, it's beautiful.
Thank you. So basically, how to convert regular polyhedrons into scalar, logarithmic, and nested wave geometries. And I think I've repeated myself enough here, but it starts to create these interference patterns. So take, for example, I've been studying this for 17 years, this shape. Now the cat is out of the bag.
Yeah.
The cat is out of the bag.
I don't think you can talk about it enough, honestly. It seems to be an exponentially complicated thing.
Yes, it is exponential.
Every time you talk about it, I understand it a little bit better. So
there's so much.
Someday I will get
it. Thank you. This is really the basis of how to create a linear progression of itself. So this is inverse square, inverted. That's the inverse square law.
Hey,
inverse
buddy.
Cube law is the same. Yes.
Do you believe in? Oh my goodness! It's big pictures here. Okay. So, do you believe in reflection, for instance? Like, where would the initial energy come for?
This is projective. This creates projective wave. The simulation. So
projected as in
waves and optics. This is how all senses are. All of our senses are only made to detect spherical wave propagations, spherical propagations from emitting sources, whether it's wind, light, electromagnetism, sound. They all work using most of them this Dougherty set right here. Now, conveniently enough, it's the square, the four directions, Earth, you know. So you get all of the nested electromagnetic harmonies, and they nest inside of here. So when you get to 6, we're seeing, as David has shown with that video and other things, you get the 6 inside of each other. You get lightning. Okay, so this one's like lightning, charge compressed, and we learned how this is charge on your body, normal charge on most things, and it can get worked up to the amplification of glowing, and your hair can stand up with this same charge pattern all over your body. But then as soon as you touch something, you neutralize, and an arc discharge comes out in a hexagonal pattern, neutralizing your body back to this. And then here's 8. So here's 8, which is also could work congruently with 4. But I've nested these and created new ones, and whew, wait till you see them. I can't wait to learn more. Yeah.
You said the 8-sided shape that you worked with at the bottom there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the pyramid in Giza is actually 8-sided. It's a different octagon than what you see here, but it is in fact 8-sided. I wonder if you took the geometry of the pyramids at Giza, specifically the 8-sided one, and worked with that. If it would, what I wonder if there would be something interesting that came out of that. Has that ever occurred to you?
Right, because it's actually like the sides are actually inverted.
Yeah, they're very slightly, but very intentionally concave.
Yeah.
And it ultimately creates an 8-sided shape, which it's almost not detectable to the human eye.
That's brilliant, because it would induce the movement of the force, right, or the charge, where it looks like it would be stable. So it would be a very directed amount of movement.
This goes right along with if anybody got to check out the electric view last Sunday with star forts. This goes exactly along with Cosmos' idea of the Earth flipping like the bolt in space 3 times over, and building strong hexagonal and different polygonal. Don't want to speak the wrong word there. Different polygonal shapes, and then they're strong structures all over the coasts, and specifically along inlets where resonance has produced these natural hard soil where you build a fortress on. So we built fortresses on these sonobiology forts, basically. Sono excretions, I guess, sound geometry, these cymatic forts. So he's saying star forts are cymatic forts. The Earth, from flipping 3 times over, created weird patterns. And oh my gosh, these star forts were amazing. Cosmos took us along these. Let me look a couple up just to show you what I'm talking about here.
Crazy exciting stuff, and I had no idea. I was blown away. I was pulling my jaw off the floor for hours. It was amazing.
Okay, so nobody can explain what the heck these things are, but they're gigantic. They're way bigger than the pyramids. They're huge, and or what they like. They're brick built on top of brick, like old construction with new construction, and nobody knows, like, so many of them all over the Earth, especially in the United States.
I'm part Czech, but I've never been there. I I actually saw an image of the Prague library, inside the library, and there is tons of symbolism in there that kind of match what you just showed too.
So this would make a lot of sense that they're building resonance, and they're building these possibly to remember our past and our history and our future, to retain it like a big like a big chip. Because there's these events that we're supposing and other people are talking about where, like the Tower of Babel, everyone's mind is erased and we
Yep.
forget history and culture, and we all speak different languages. So these star forts are supposed, possibly, as we were discussing the ideas on the show, that they're memory retention fortresses, or to keep dinosaurs out.
Or
both,
to keep
or
the
both.
charge, or to keep the charge projected in the direction it like wanted. There's a lot here. This is that like this hypothesis is actually could be a big deal. Think about the architecture of the structure as the direction of the charge, as because if we, like Buddy and I have talked about this a lot too, and I always see it as like gears, like
Electric
cogs and
universe
gears in the
architecture.
shaping.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and so if they're built this way, it's to, I mean, hypothetically, to keep the charge not just moving, but moving at the acquired gauge, right? The
Yeah,
acquired.
and like they formatted, literally the soil was like this already. It was a strong fort to build on. Then they built on it on purpose. Who's they? There wasn't enough people in America to build these things, and a bunch of the cities are focused and centralized on them. We went through and we saw that a bunch of them in Rome, including the Vatican, ancient walls that nobody's talking about, with walls built on top of walls, and the structure where you have the nested geodesic structures where it's almost impossible to know how they built them. But
I thought it was notable that there were some that were in ruins he's found, and some that are being maintained today. Some are very important sites that are like political or historical sites. Some are just throwaway, like backwater things. And so what I always look for is something that repeats throughout history. And so we see in these star forts, we see, this is such a funny thing, star forts. It's like that's what I would want to, it's like a fun name to say. But the bottom line is that this is an ancient formation. This is a historical formation, and these are modern formations. This is whatever these things are, these shapes. They're based on something very, very ancient that has been maintained throughout history. That's an arc that I'm fascinated with when I study history. When I look at how things connect, those are the kind of connections that I look for, because this is something that was known in ancient times. It was obviously predated. It was discovered. It was worked with. It was built on, and it was rediscovered and maintained throughout hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of years. So
well,
that's not like a drop in the pan. Like, well, we're gonna worship Pan for a while or whatever. I'm just saying, off the top of my head. But this is something that's been ingrained in our culture, and it's been sort of built upon and understood and revered for a long, long time. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was involved in the Detroit Dream Project, and I'm pulling that up. This was back in 2007, right when my baby was born, and I was being torn into, like, I was shredding it, basically, killing it, and doing landscape architecture and working with David Best. This is the temple, and it's really beautiful. It's in downtown Redford, Old Redford,
Wow.
in the art district. There's a bunch of murals that we painted, Chaz and I, in Detroit.
Intense looking.
Yeah, very intense. Really cool. Fun project to be a part of. But initially, I was the landscape architect. Well, I mean, not initially, all the way through. And And what I thought immediately was to do a golden triangle on top of it and do the geometry I was working on, because it came to me in '03, and I was working on a really cool piece in '07. So I did the geometry around it and planted trees and stuff like that. So it's natural to think geometrically, especially if we have an architect that's doing things geometrically, you know. So I can see star forts being like somewhat inherent in our blood, along with the geometric structures that we create. So I was kind of liking it, just the idea of people creating them, to the fact that I did kind of the same thing with landscape architecture, but not on any size as gigantic. And anyway, we could talk for a long time about these star forts, the geometry. We could do I want to do a show on them for sure, and hopefully have Cosmos on. Guy's great. He's Irish. I'm Irish. We need to kick it. So these star forts all throughout history, they're gigantic, and then going right back to this geometry here of holding on, and how charge and charge separation occurs between the layers of geometries, just as far as walls and stuff like that. That's interesting to note. So we got some more images in here people have shared. Diatoms. Michael, you asked about the charge from the atmosphere affecting biological entities. I think that the glass itself is sonobiology. It's created out of resonance from the Birkeland currents, and there's 100,000 or so different shapes, and each one of them is a different entity, different type of creature.
Mitochondria.
Yeah,
just expanding.
And that's what my friend and my boss, coworker, or whatever at work, give a shout out to him, Tim Standish. He proposed yesterday that what if every branch of electricity is unique? Like uniqueness in the animals, uniqueness in our human kind, uniqueness in animals,
like your voice.
Uniqueness on every single dendrite, you know. And I was like, duh, of course. It's the travel. It is consciousness is liquid crystal, you know, and it's the part of the travel of it that makes it unique. The traversing, that's what makes the snowflake. The path of it, it's always different through the cloud as it bumps into other snowflakes. And oh, that was a different episode. It just started playing. That was crazy. Okay, so I'll go through some more of these. So these resonant structures, these open geometry is open. It seems like life is open. Life is an open source, open scale geometry. You have the different amount of circles around the center produces the frequency that goes through the center of the torus. And the amplitude is created somehow, maybe by the amount of times it goes around. But one of the two, if Neil was here, he'd talk about it a little deeper.
I think it's about how much pressure you can compress with the primer field, the north and south pole, and then encased with an electromagnetic field.
Oh, this is what David was talking about. Okay, he was sharing some images here. Okay. Sorry to cut you off there, Michael. But yeah, it is pressure. Pressure and the release of pressure produces Lichtenberg dendritic arborization, which is what you get with rivers, you get with charge, you get it with charge dissipation, you get it with arcing, you get it with thoughts, mind, eyeballs, consciousness, bioplasma. Anyway.
And you can see that here, buddy. So the white portion on the left is Dallas-Fort Worth. And the darkest portion, kind of on the right of the yin-yang, I call it, is called the Llano Uplift. And that's a huge granite dome batholith that sticks up. That's the highest area in this whole central, I mean, in the main portion of Texas. That's the highest little uplift center. And then Dallas-Fort Worth is much lower in that range there. And I've noticed all those Lichtenberg patterns all kind of point into that same direction. And then on the south side, so the top of this is actually facing east. The right side of the photo is facing south towards the Gulf of Mexico. I flipped it this way so you can kind of see the yin-yang pattern there.
Okay.
But I found this very fascinating because you've got, and again, that I don't know if that's positive and negative, but again, on the right would be lifted up, on the left would be depressed. And it follows that on the coastline too. So on that entire kind of you can see it on the coastline. So there in that little pink center, right in the center of Texas, is that uplift of granite. And again, the way they proposed that is everything else around it eroded, right, for that tip of that batholith to show. But I don't believe that is the case. In this that purple area that follows the freeway there, that's the fault line. It's the Balcones fault line, and that wraps all the way over. Yes, so that's where again it gets into the more of the coastal zone, depressed area. Everything above and to the west of that starts becoming very mountainous. That's what they call the hill country, and it is lots of Lichtenberg and dendritic ridges. And even from San Antonio, if you were looking at a Google Earth view, it is dendritic patterns that are reaching northward. And then you have a bunch of Lichtenberg river systems, kind of coming from the right into that Dallas-Fort Worth area. So it's, again, I see the storm systems follow this same pattern, and I can only imagine if there was a much higher, rate of ionization in our atmosphere in antiquity, how the storm systems we see today would be like nothing. I mean, this would just be immensely incredible, and I could see how these formations could happen from what's going on in the sky, because there's also a difference in charge potential underneath the ground at the same time. And there you go. There's one, that was a Google Earth snippet. And that actually, I had snipped that and located all the cave systems that I had found. And right there on that bend, where it says Natural Bridge Caverns, I've been there, really awesome. But there's a bunch of cave systems there. And right about where it says, actually around Natural Bridge Caverns is where I found what I believe was a gigantic fulgurite. It was a huge rock that I could literally lay on, and I couldn't even touch, all of the sides. But I broke a chunk off, and I made a video about it. But it, I've got a real fulgurite from the beaches of Florida, and then I have a fulgurite from Texas, and I think it's a fulgurite because I don't know if you could hear that. Can you hear that sound?
Yeah.
So that was the Texas piece, and this is a real fulgurite from the beaches of Florida. And it's got, if you could see it, it's actually got a kind of a spiraling fashion, just like that formation of the confirmed fulgurite. So everything that I have found just keeps becoming more evidence to me that it was something, whatever happened was more electrical in nature than we're giving it credit for, or at least the outside world is giving it credit for. So let's see. If you keep scrolling through, I've got variations of different things I've found about the geology of Texas and showing the different regions and materials that are located. Vegetation is something that I look for too whenever I go somewhere, just to see, especially on Google Earth, you can see formations in the ground by what grows there.
You know what I was gonna, or you know what I have an idea to do?
Hmm.
I own the website or the domain name of geocachingfood.com,
Mm-hmm.
and I want it to be like an alternate reality kind of AR type of thing where everybody goes out and kind of uses it and just goes and shows around. Like, you can eat all sorts of different types of grass. There's so that anybody anywhere basically knows that there's food and this is edible, and there's recipes and there's all sorts of different stuff, and you hold your phone up and you can just look around and see what's edible. What can I eat?
That would be epic.
Yeah, a lot of stuff stays very similar, you know. You have grasses that are annual, you have trees, you have pine cones, how to eat the sap, the syrup, how to make this, how to, dude, because there's food everywhere. It's just that we don't know that it's there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of rocks that you can eat, salt, you can grind up stuff. So I kind of wanted to do that, and then start it in maybe state lands so that forest rangers and all sorts of different people could do it. And then, but yeah, it would require having some sort of a signal in order to, if you're lost or whatever, to eat or find food, or I don't know. Ultimately, it sounds great. Like, I just want to go around and start eating different grasses and shit. Like, like, you know what I mean? Like, everybody's talking about this horrible virus that's called dandelions, and how good it is for you. And I want to make tea with it and stuff. Whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I've heard dandelions are good for you.
Mm-hmm. And the root and making tea out of it.
Oh yeah.
So I was dating this wonderful girl, and she was what is it, raw vegan for 4 years before I started dating her, and she stayed raw vegan the whole time we were dating. But she taught me all sorts of really cool stuff, and it never really left my psyche. And I'm kind of thinking about just like, because she would just go pick stuff and like present it to me. And I couldn't get Aurora to eat freaking anything, and we're out hanging out in the wilderness, and Anna's just like, oh, here, pick this, eat this, and Aurora's just eating whatever her zebra wants to feed her. You know, it's hilarious. So her name is Anna, but she also goes by Zebra Octobra. Shout out to her. She's marvelous, wonderful being. Detroiter,
Nice.
singer.
Thank you, Zebra.
Yeah, she's great. But anyway.
Hey, buddy.
I'd eat peyote with you.
Oh, I've done that. That's not. It's all right.
I've never tried peyote, but I always thought it would be fun.
Yeah, it was okay. I guess I should have ate more. Didn't go all the way.
Just go for the Deemsters, bro.
Well, it was kind of weird. I was in a teepee with kids, you know? I mean, like Native American style. I don't know if you're supposed to talk about this kind of stuff, but you know, that's what they do. If you know about the indigenous cultures, it's part of the Native American church, which is I'm part of the Native American church, and that's one of their rituals is peyote.
Yeah,
and
they have a church of
do it too.
DMT, psilocybin.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
But I was wondering, does that winding map of a rodent coil that I posted in the chat look accurate to you? You think you could pull it up?
I went past it, the black and white one.
No, not the black and white one.
I think it's further on.
Do you mind if I get to it when we get to it and continue with what David was talking about here real quick?
Oh,
I'm going to go through the images that everybody
please,
posted
at your own pace, sir.
Cool. Perfect. All right. So David, just to conserve time, tell us what you want to about some of this topology maybe, and I'll continue on.
Sure. So I guess what the point I wanted to share here is I am a huge fan of Andrew Hall's work, and comparing the clouds of Jupiter and how those storm systems move compared to what we're proposing happened on Earth in antiquity. And I believe Texas is, that central portion of Texas where that uplift is, would be one of those main points of counter rotation that is pulling up a storm. Yes, that is actually pulling up that. Yeah, the same storms that you see on Jupiter, but it affecting our planet the same way.
Yep.
And
I see no reason. I've seen. I love Andy Hall's work in the micro or the I try to use his speak. I haven't heard one of his videos in a minute, but what does he call them? The micro multi-vortexes and stuff.
Yeah.
Multi-cyclonic vortexes and stuff. Cyclonic action. Yeah, it's great.
But that area, and I'll share one story because I have a buddy that lives in Llano, which is 15 minutes north of a place called Enchanted Rock. And the Native Americans hold that area sacred. And yearly they go out there and do a ritual. And what they say is after a rain, you can physically see the spirits dancing above this granite dome batholith. And to me, it just feels and seems electrical. And he says also every year in the city of Llano, people from all around the world come there and it's more of an event for the city folk, but they say they do these dances in hopes to open up this vortex portal above them. And I find that very curious to me. And I plan on trying to attend this year in March.
Sounds like a seance. Come in.
Yeah, it's more of it seems like it is a seance. So I'm very curious to hear about that. There's also an area just north of Llano, there's a mineral called lanite. And it is essentially granite with an additional material in it that's found nowhere else in the world, supposedly. So his buddy has 600 acres in that area and has lots of that. So I want to grab some of that and see how it responds electrically in an experiment. But that's what I wanted to share there in regards to Texas. And we were talking about the different deposits and the fault lines and whatnot. If you scroll over a couple more,
So you think like hundreds of thousands of years of cyclical cyclonic activity built up the charge of this whole area to this Uno uplift?
It's Llano, it's two L's, but
okay.
I personally believe that was created during potentially one or two events.
Long standing, because what I'm seeing is that Andy Hall's work is showing, excuse me, hang on, is showing long-standing cyclonic activity that builds up charge and pulls up ridges and mountains. And then there's also instantaneous events that people are talking about, large arc discharges that build up in one event, but the event could have been 100 years, or because events are scalable, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Our idea of an event is a moment to moment is a metric tensor, but what's a metric tensor? You know what I mean? Whatever. So, please tell us hundreds of years, maybe 7 days. What do you think?
I can't answer that. I think it was in a relatively short time, but again, is that in days or years? I don't know.
Right.
I don't know those answers.
Right.
But
and that's weird to think about, is events are scalable. Like an event, getting married is an event, but there's everything leading up to the event.
True.
And for everything, I want to say it is a process crystal like this. An event, life is an event, getting prepared for an event, death, how to die properly, possibly, Egyptian style, if you want to get into whatever. But and then a lot of us want to just die in ignorance on jack me up full with a bunch of morphine and let me go and slip off to Amnesiaville, you know. But some of us want to die consciously with conscious. I don't know. Anyway, I brought up death, and that's an interesting topic. It's an event.
Well,
It's
certainly.
a process.
Yeah, it is a process. It takes your whole life to get there.
Yeah. Well, there are
Completion of a circuit.
Yep.
Yeah, deities in every culture that were born and transformed and died and transformed again as they reappeared, right? And then went away again. So
I had a magical event a couple days before I went to the Thunderbolts in 2017 and met a bunch of beautiful people that got these shows started. I was out there with my friend. I was out in Arizona with my friend. We went out to this random structure. Well, it was rocks. It was a holy site, a Native American holy site. These gigantic rocks that are impossible to move, you know, like facing the four directions perfectly. And inside of there was a tortoise, a desert tortoise, at the very center of the four huge megalithic stones. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this tortoise trying to say? What's the purpose? You know what I mean? Like the only time I've ever been in a plane to go meet Don Scott for the Electric Universe thing, and I meet this turtle first. So I'm like, what is going on? And my friend's like, I've never seen a desert tortoise in my life. They're pretty rare. I picked it up and it poops. It goes all over. So the witch doctor in me says, should I collect the poop? What type of specimen is it? No, I'm kidding. There was no witch doctor in me, but it was absurd. And it was strange.
I must study this.
Who wouldn't be curious, you know?
Is it going to enlighten me? Should I eat it? You know, because like when you eat what comes out of the caribou, that's the only way to get into the sky.
My spirit animal has presented me with the present.
Desert tortoise, oh desert tortoise. Oh, that was a good cactus you ate.
I receive your gracious gift, O tortoise.
I have pictures of it. I have them away somewhere. Someday I'll release them, but it's great.
You should. I can imagine you going up to Wall Thornhill and saying, "A tortoise has brought you a gift."
No, actually,
I come
have you seen the gift? Have you seen the gift that I gave Wall Thornhill?
No.
He represents. He's holding it up. Let's see. Do I have it anywhere? It's just a fractal branded pendant, but I was handing them out to a bunch of people there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So he was representing with a fractal branded pendant. So, guys, we went all over the map. Let's try to hone in here. Maybe some closing remarks. We got star forts. We got acoustic reverberation and resonance building the solid ground for star forts, which could be biblical talk for building your house on non-shifty ground. You find the solid ground first, then you build your walled empire, but whatever.
Or account for polarity shifts. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And even the harmonics or frequencies of cymatics is intriguing to me, because I'm looking at the images that you have on screen right now, and if you go in the chat, the very last comment, I posted a video that my wife did, because she does cymatics. You guys have probably heard of her, but you might have not known she's my wife. But let's see, it's the very last. It's a link in the chat. Oh, I think there's his Taurus that he was talking about, the rodent coil.
Yep, we're gonna have to get back to it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love those pictures.
But yeah, in the actual chat, it's not an image, it's a YouTube link, buddy.
Okay, let me get out of here and let me go into here. Sorry, my mind gets lost sometimes, and plus my kid was like, chicken noodle soup, is it done?
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm like, I'm like, look, kid, can you see I'm on a video podcast?
You
Yeah,
might
but
find this intriguing if you haven't seen this particular one. And I don't recall what frequency she was using. Start it back at the beginning and watch how it morphs. And it reminds me of your Dougherty set that you showed us. That new thing that you just shared with us. Just watching
Looks
what
like
happens.
512 hertz or
Right.
432.
it's turning up. It's changing.
Yeah, it's
not the
it's
same
changing, and then
variable.
all of a sudden it's going to do strange things, pretty
Wow.
quickly.
Diatoms, radiolaria. You know what
Maybe.
radiolaria is?
Tell us.
Radiolaria is similar to diatoms, plankton. I'm gonna pause this.
Yeah.
Pull us into. And people send me this stuff, because they're like, dude, the Dougherty set. And I'm like, yes, thank you. I am an antenna. I am a transceiver, a transmitter and receiver. So
Wow.
people send me this stuff.
You're a capacitator.
Oh yeah.
Don't you call me names.
Wow.
Let me say what I am. I am that I am, damn it.
That's just
You
my
say you're
opinion.
a math potato?
You know, whatever. Yeah.
A mathemabator?
A mashed potato.
Let's whatever way you want to take it, you know.
So those
Where were
are
we?
living organisms, I take it.
Yes. And I
Wow.
suppose that those were probably formed by sound, which all creatures are.
Yeah.
I
think we're living vibrations. Yeah. Myself.
We're standing wave
I think
structures.
we're reoccurring wavelengths.
We're standing wave structures. Also, we are the interference. We are a destructive wave interference. We are the break in the pattern of symmetry. We are the broken symmetry.
We are the code writers of our own wave fulcrums. Indeed.
You're when you're in the electromagnetic. When you're in the electromagnetic universe, you are in symmetry, in heaven, in stillness. When you are born, you are into broken stillness. There's brokenness. There is constant records being recorded of every one of your thoughts and your actions. And there's a light record. There's an Akashic record. There's a physical record. There's a mental record, and there's a spiritual record recorded of all things. And this is just me going on a tangent here for a minute. And these records are recorded in sound. And anyway, so I digress.
A symphony.
Yeah,
it is a symphony.
Yeah.
And it's a great example is we could pluck one strand of your hair and know what you've been up to for the last 9 months. Or 6 months, was it?
I already shaved all my body hair. You can't prove it.
It's none of your damn business.
That's cool. We'll get your blood. That's how good.
Yeah.
Bleach doesn't work, by the way.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
So
what
forensic evidence. Speaking of forensics, a wonderful statement by Robert Hawthorne Jr., which couldn't be here right now. Shout out to him. He said that the geometry will be first to prove the forensic evidence of the geological scale. The geology will be the forensic evidence of the geometry. And that's basically what the video is that you were showing.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Scott laid out the geometry along with Birkeland currents, which I create so many new currents. I'm totally gonna call one Scott current.
The Scott current.
Yeah, Scott currents. A bunch of Scott currents.
You totally did throw me off. I was like Lichtenberg, and then whoever you said. And
yeah.
I've always called him Lichtenberg patterns or whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
So Michael shared, he was talking about the rodent coil, and I've also followed rodent for a long time. And I see the cymatic work that my wife does, and I'm watching this transform, and I keep seeing a cross section, straight down view, like a cross section of that 369 morphing.
Yes.
So it's almost visualizations, because she is changing the frequency up and down to morph this stuff back and forth. So to me, it's a cool visualization. Again, it's just refracted light on a vibrating medium.
It'd be like a cross section of one of these. If you were to slice one of these are cymatics.
Yeah.
These are just reoccurring cymatic. All cymatics is repetition of frequency, which is what number is. That's all number is. It's just cyclical repetitions of a frequency. But anyway, so you slice any of these, and you're gonna get an image of one of these, a diatom, a cymatic image, and they're all going to be different frequencies. And you can see clearly how plankton, radiolaria, different living creatures are thriving off of the charge from Birkeland currents, because of where the diatoms are born and birthed right around the Arctic belts, the Arctic currents, where the Birkeland currents come right down into the ocean, fill the oceans with the nutrients necessary somehow, phosphorus, nitrogen. The diatoms eat exactly what plants eat, the same exact diet.
Is that light?
And then plants, no, the nutrients that are necessary for plants, nitrogen, phosphorus, the most abundant elements, some of the most abundant elements. Heather would know more.
Do you think abundant elements are just, different charged particles?
Food, just different food. Different abundant elements are different food for different. Everything is about eating. It's open. All life is open, so you can see what it's consuming, what it's. You can learn a lot about a creature by what it eats and how it eats, but you can learn a lot more about a creature by what it's willing to sacrifice for a meal. And we all become zombies when we're pushed to the point. We all become psychopaths when we're pushed to the point to protect our families. I can't say all of us, but the point.
When my blood sugar's low, I don't
know if you've been to that point, but that point that I'm talking about, you guys still hear me? I heard some interference. Is we become zombies when we're hungry, and when we need to feed our children.
We need electrolytes.
Yes.
Isn't that a fun word?
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think what we eat, because cows eat grass. The grass absorbs minerals and sunlight. Well, I guess it uses minerals to create the pattern of glucose, and I guess forms it. And the cows eat the grass. So technically, we're eating light. I mean,
we are light. Yeah. Light is us. We eat light, and light is a foliation of geometric lensing. Lenses, overlapping spheres produces lenses. Lenses are individual particles, and they spin and vibrate. When you create it to be cyclical, like how the Earth is moving over and over and over, spiraling, you create forms. The forms have open mouths and open anuses, which are the taking in of charge and
North and South
energy.
Pole.
Yeah, North and South Pole. All creatures know what the difference between their mouth and their anus.
Some people don't.
Well, people are.
Some people just talk and
check
talk.
this out.
I'm sorry, I'm just joking.
You can eat a lot from your ass. You can.
Oh my gosh.
You can use it the opposite way around. You don't even need to consume. You can put nutrients up your ass for the rest of your life and not eat anything.
I think South Park did this.
That would be weird. That's really weird. I just had a weirred thought. That was too.
That actually is a South Park episode. Oh my god. South Park did it first.
Of course. Oh. Go ahead, David. What's up?
I was making that joke.
So let me go back to this, please, if I could, talk about myself more.
Please. I love
Oh,
hearing
but the
about you.
rodent coils, man.
Hang on. Let me get
Hey,
out of
buddy,
this.
I just want
We're
to
gonna
say
go to your rodent coils first.
I want to say
Yeah.
something to you personally. You were my very first Electric Universe friend. Did you know that?
I did not know that, and I think you might have mentioned something about that the first time we had you on the Electric View.
Yeah. Well, it's true. So I appreciate you, man. You've been a huge influence to me, and I wouldn't be doing anything I'm doing today had you not inspired me in so many indirect ways that I never really told you about. So I appreciate you, man.
How cool is that?
That means
have
a
to say-
lot.
That's
I have
really
to say,
awesome.
I don't even know your name, and I appreciate you.
Michael,
I
this is
kinda
David
missed it.
Brown. Yeah,
Yep. My
I'm
name's
sorry, what was it?
David Brown.
David
David,
Brown.
I
You
appreciate
take all
it.
the colors and mix it together, and you get brown. That's me, man.
But buddy, that is a great picture. I love that depiction with the fingerprint of God and whatnot. But the picture I was referring to is the rodent, that one right there. Yes.
Okay.
Does that winding map look kind of like the structure of any other type of atomic atom
100%.
would?
100%. I would say that it's knotted layers of these. So it would go in
Exactly.
another layer. This would be one torus. Then you go in, and the first time I discovered this, I used nested golden 90-degree
Gee whiz.
nested 90-degree golden spirals. And then I put it on the Dougherty set. Well, actually, it was made in it already.
What
And then I
the-
found certain specific pinch points. Everything is surface tension. Absolutely everything is about surface tension. So the tighter this gets on the outside, the more in this pulls.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
I thought this would be a great visual for you, because you can also say, if you want, because you're talking about scale, if you were to scale this up to say humans electromagnetic field pattern, each one of those lines could represent a different person or a different object or a different hertz that everything is radiating to.
That
Mhm.
image
And
kind of reminds me of the iris.
oh yeah.
The Ouroboros, or what do you
No,
mean? Yeah.
like your
Yeah,
pupil.
Oh,
Well, think about this. How long have our eyes been looking for other eyes out in nature in response to fear or run?
or
What is
just
it?
electromagnetic interaction, like
particular
between
formation.
perspectives.
Well, this is what I'm getting at. When we look out into nature, and using our reticular formation in the brain, which is I think the name of the center of the fight or flight response. We've been looking for spheres, dilated pupils. You know when someone's up to no good when their eyes become a certain way. Everything has to do with the eyes. The
Well, then
secret
it can't
soul.
all be bad.
So when you're out and about and you're in your tribe and you look someone in the eye and you see that they're out of their mind because of the way that their eyes are, our communication has always been the dilation of. Think of how much nonverbal communication goes past us that we miss, that is all has to do with the retina and the eye and the dilation of the pupils.
Mm-hmm. Oh
I
yeah.
mean, it's so
Not
close
only
to your
humans, but other
pineal
creatures.
gland.
Other
Mhm.
creatures too. What was that?
I was just thinking about how close your eyes are to your pineal gland, and how they must be so ionized and be able to. That's where I get you can have this piercing vision. If you ever felt someone look at you, I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
My wife always tells me to stop staring at her, and she doesn't make eye contact, but she knows. And I'll be
Scary.
like, I wasn't staring at you, and she's like, yes, you were, and I'll have to. And I'll say yes. She's very good at that.
Dang, you're
Oh.
charming. You're charming, guy.
You know, this image here, it is obviously looks like an iris, but also if you think of it in 3 dimensions, it's a tubule. I mean, visually, if you took a photograph of a long tube, a stovepipe, it would look exactly like that. It's a perfect visual representation of a tube, not a you know. Yeah, and but the interchangeableness of those two things, I think, is notable to the extent that a tube is a connection between two things. Visually, we're seeing something, we're tubing between, you know, we're creating a connection visually. It's the concepts are seemingly different, but you know, when you start to think
The
in
lightning
terms
in the sky and the synapses from our eyes connecting with our visual cortex.
things that
I
function
mean,
in 2 dimensions really also simultaneously exist in 3 and 4 dimensions or whatever.
Yes.
The idea being that it's all really just one thing. We're seeing it in one application or one expression, but there is also universality there, which I think is really quite profound.
I'm diverse. I try and be diverse and objective as I can. But, yeah. I feel once you start labeling things, it becomes harder to learn. But necessary, I suppose.
Oh, here's what I gave.
I think there's a way of thinking that's just like, what else is it? You know, some people just aren't willing to settle for what is
Lichtenberg.
I like those.
Nice.
I gave those. That's what I was given to.
But yes,
Paul
I totally
Thornhill.
agree.
Oh, cool. Beans.
Yeah.
Those are beautiful.
This right here, if you think of, I wired this up. I hope I have another image of it, but I put fishing line on this, and conical. Ro, can you please shut the door, please? I put conical fishing line in it, and I wrapped it. And let me see if I can show another. Let me see if I have another picture here of the finished end product. I'm hoping I do. Doesn't look like I do on this right here. But
and last time, I'm sorry.
Go. When you twist this outside, it tightens where my fingers are pinching, and then it opens back up to the other side, and it becomes a wave like that outward. But when you twist this right here, it opens up a portal, and then it closes back up. So if you want to affect the pinch points, you go to the outside of the mode, the outside of the wave amplitude, and you mess with the wave amplitude if you want to mess with the nodal points. And that's how we're going to get into these networks and become part of the wood wide web, the wood wide web.
Yes, it's all about filling those gaps. Like in that tourist picture, I feel like those gaps are potentials for growth and expansion. Like, and when it's all said and done, it'll be completely full. But yeah,
I wanted to touch more on this one, just because you can see the wraparound, the azimuthal type of wraparound filament snaking all the way around, this hexagonal bolt type configuration.
Beautiful.
I could do very, very much MC Escher and start building holes and houses out of these, and walls and bridges from one to another, and ladders.
You could probably collect water too.
I'm just talking about like an MC Escher type of drawing or print. And this is what made me realize that, wow, these are actually really structures. And this was I do this way before David showed some of his imagery that he's been working on, or that guy's theory that, what's his name? Brown?
Wayne Byrne.
Wayne Byrne.
Oh,
Wayne Byrne.
not David Schwimmer?
No, Wayne Byrne. That's what this episode is focused around. A mysterious figure who's been wiped off the internet, who Wallthorne Hill, David Talbot, and Donald, at least Donald Scott should know about this dude. So
Yeah. Well, and he references Donald Scott and Wallace Thornhill in his paper, and gives them credit for sharing their work directly with him. And then one other gentleman, I'll find his name here.
So this releasing, every one of the geometric views from now on, I'm going to put together presentations like this and have new work that I release. Next week is going to be verifying the work of Eric Lerner and how jets are formed, intergalactic nuclei, basically Z pinches, black holes, how they are formed, the geometry of them, and I have a really cool working model that backs up what his model is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here you go, buddy. Here is the other person he referenced for assistance and guidance on this paper in preparing the paper, Dr. Louis Hissink, with 2 S's. So I haven't researched him yet.
Okay.
So, I think that would be proper that we all did.
Oh, how about this? How about we go through his paper a little bit? Just for the end of the video, we'll wrap it up with his paper, which we should have started with. And I have that right here in the link in the chat.
Oh, here we go. Here's a little bit about this gentleman, Louis Hissink. He's the editor-in-chief of the New Concepts in Global Tectonics Journal, regarded as one of the top are you back to recording? Oh yeah, you are.
I'm recording. Yeah, we're on.
I found, so the author of this paper references the assistance and direction from a Dr. Louis Hissink with 2 S's. And I looked him up and found that this gentleman is the editor-in-chief of the New Concepts in Global Tectonics Journal and is regarded as one of the top diamond geologists in Australia, having made numerous discoveries of kimberlite in Western Australia and New South Wales.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Oh
my gosh. You know what that means? This is what we were talking about on the electric view. Hang on a minute. I have to shut my door.
All right.
Hang on. Roll. I'm going to have her do it. Come here, please. So sorry, guys, for yelling.
Name, by the way.
All right. Yeah, her name's Aurora. I named her that before I knew what Birkeland currents were.
Nice. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Shut the door, please.
Yeah.
But as she was being born, the Dougherty Set I was working on it on the floor in the hospital. Well, not the same time, but that week.
I was being born. You were just working on your work. So.
That's her in the background here. She's like, yeah, so while I was being born, you were just sketching on the floor. That's normal. It is normal, especially when the information's freshly coming to you.
Oh, goodness. You know what?
What a precious slice of life that was.
Yeah, she's 12. She's got her earbuds in, and she's like, leave me alone.
I love it. That was awesome. I was literally being born, and you were just sketching on the floor.
He's having epiphanies, man.
Born.
Okay, the same time, it was 2007, and I was watching The Last Mimsy, and The Last Mimsy was the same geometry of the Sriyantra of the Aurora star that I was drawing, that happened to be for time warp and time travel, the ancient Tibet symbol for time travel that I was doing while I was on the floor. So it was like,
so cool.
Yeah,
it's just, it is weird how things come together, and the context
Definitely.
within which epiphanies happen. It's so true.
So here's the paper. Found it. Here we are. Wayne Byrne. I emailed this address earlier this morning, and it got returned back to me. And David now is doing some new research, and it seems like he's tracking this dude down. And what did you just find?
I found, so I looked up the gentleman that he referenced. So at the end of this paper, he provides this acknowledgments. The author would like to thank the following: Dr. Louis Hissink for his assistance and guidance in the preparation of this paper. Donald E. Scott for providing me with images and the basis for my lightning bolt model. Walt Thornhill for pointing me in the right directions. And then I looked up Louis Hissink, which is the editor-in-chief of the New Concepts in Global Tectonics Journal. He is regarded as one of the top diamond geologists in Australia, having made numerous discoveries of kimberlite in Western Australia and New South Wales.
Boom.
So,
okay.
I have a feeling.
Can
Yes.
I interrupt? Oh, this is where I wanted to take this. That was a reminder. On the electric view last week, we were talking about Native Americans talking about snakes going up and down through the ground,
Yep.
or dragons, and where the dragon went above the ground, or snake, it was a gem deposit, and then when it went back in the ground, it was another gem deposit where they found, and there were circles, and this is why this guy's finding this stuff, dude.
Yeah, I like it, and that's the rainbow serpent of Australia. Right? The Aborigines talk about the rainbow serpent, which, again, even in my own experiments, there's been many times where I will see what to me looks like a literal plasma snake. It's not so much an arc like lightning, but it looks like a glowing snake, and it moves around and through materials, and it'll go down into it and come out of this earth material at a different portion and still be connected. And it seems like the snake goes in and out, and it reminds me of all kinds of legends and myths of beings or spiritual beings or things that can hurt or harm you or help you in some ways. And to me, it does seem like this is to me, it seems very plausible of a scientific description for what everybody has passed off throughout history as myth and legend. And just chalking it up to someone's crazy imagination. And I've always questioned, what the hell is a dragon? Because I've never seen one. But after doing these experiments, I really feel like I've seen a dragon now. Not a physical flesh and blood thing, but something that is an ionized material of any type of nature.
So for the audience, let me just explain a couple of things for the audience here. David and I work with high voltage electricity, and it's extremely dangerous. We're not licensed to do it, but we're sharing our discoveries with people, and we're being careful as we can. People are dropping like flies doing what we do. It's very dangerous. Do not do this at home unless you are as stupid as us.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yes, and there's been a couple of times where...
Also, specifically, buddy, don't drop like a fly. That would be good. We need you.
That's why I don't do it much anymore, because I have more geometry to deliver to the world that's, I think, more important than some of this Lichtenberg.
More turtle pooping, less fly dropping.
Surface etching. Yes. On with the spiritual yantras.
Yeah. Thank you for that disclaimer there. That's important. Because people think they can pull a transformer out of a microwave, and even trying to remove that, the capacitor itself can kill you.
Okay, let me tell you this. Another warning. I work with electrical engineers, and my brother was an electrical engineer. He has since passed, not from electricity, but God rest his soul. Amen. Love you, Jay. Shout out to you. Have to say that. So, but he built the first one and it didn't work. This was in 2015. And I'm like, dude, nobody's doing this and we got to do it. Come on, let's do it. I'm like, we got to do one more. He built another one. He wouldn't touch it. Okay. We would stay away from it. And I did the first arcing and the first, like up close work and like moving the wires and stuff. But then we realized that it was too dangerous with two people because he could accidentally plug it in when I was touching the leads or vice versa. So it's better to be a single man operation. My body went through a lot of different morphologies and pains and all sorts of stuff. And I don't know if that was due to directly sitting on the ground on a rubber mat or other things, dealing with these currents, or my body has gone through some changes. But I don't know, David, have you experienced anything, like, because at first I couldn't find anything that said that the radiation poisoning, I know it gives off noxious gases depending on what you burn, if you're burning antler, bone, you know. So
I mean, I'll say I went through a change in a mental state this past year, which I've been doing this for a year, and I've also been discharging into quite a few earth materials, from salts to metals.
I've been doing found rock, found stone, stones that I find, and it's hard to do it just right. So it's rare. And I've created quite a few of them already, and I call it fractalite. I want to do the same thing that that my buddy did with Uperlites. I just interviewed the gentleman, Eric Rintamaki, who discovered Uperlites. It's a glowing sodalite that's in rock that's all along Lake Superior up in the UP. So he told me the route to go about how to legally own the name to the rock and start selling it under that name.
Oh, cool.
So I'm in the process of doing that with fractalite right now.
Nice.
I would first called the wood fractalite too, but then I just like the fact that it's a real stone with electrical arcing in it. And I actually want to check out what it turns into, because it's transmuting these stones, and you can see rivers of lava flowing when you do the stone just right, just the right amount of water, just the right amount of, you know, current and timing. Otherwise it'll start exploding, and the rocks will start shooting out, which is like what there's all sorts of proof of this in Texas and out in the plains, like you were talking about, and or not the plains, that area. Random huge rocks like moved from ginormous forces or something out of a mountain that nobody can explain how it got there. I've seen this firsthand, and I've given Andy, I had two of the best specimen that I ever created on my tour with me in 2017, and I gave Andy Hall the second best one and the first best one to Susan, and they have them to, hopefully they have them to this day, I'm sure. But you could probably test those and see what the river turned into, if it's an analyzine or what, like out of glass.
Yeah. Man,
So,
that's awesome.
So tell me more about, okay, so I will say this about electricity and dealing close with high voltage electricity and feeding it, nurturing it, knowing what it needs, knowing what it wants, knowing when it's silent and when it's craving, the different sounds of it as it arcs through different types of woods and different densities of woods. And I can pick out the type of lettering and the type of etching based off of just the pattern that's created now off of different types of wood. I can look at it and be like, oh, well, that's oak. Oh, that's definitely pine for sure. I don't know what kind of pine, but that's pine. And it whispers. So like, and sitting there in the calm quietness and listening to it move in the paths of least resistance and the efficiency, you're tuning into what efficiency sounds like, and on broad spectrums, and so we become spectral analysis. We get these sounds, we get all the extra junk that comes with it too, whether it be poisons or what. But basically what I was getting at is when electricity is silent, it's the most dangerous because you can't see it and you can't hear it, yet it's there.
Yep. I learned that when I finally got a variac and built a rectifier bridge and started experiencing what it's like when you turn it down so low. You know, from all the way on, it's a real thick arc. And when you start to turn it down, and I'm talking about an arc discharge, not, you know, connected to the surface, it still is the same way. It will go down into a, from glow mode down to where dark mode, where you can't see it, but you can still hear it.
Okay. So, okay, sorry, continue.
Yes, but there's a point to where you can still turn it down further, and I can see on the variac there's still juice going there, but I see nothing and I hear nothing. But as soon as I bump it up just a little bit, all of a sudden I start to hear a whispering crackle. Yeah, that's probably the best description, because as you raise the voltage up, the frequency gets higher, and it starts to get faster, just like if you're playing on an analog synthesizer.
Exponentially.
Yeah, and you slowly turn the modulation up. It's going to get faster and louder in frequency. The frequency is going to become higher, from more of a low, slow, on and off groaning to a really high pitched, very prevalent sound at the highest frequency when it's on. And in doing that, made me, I guess, experience what it's like for telluric currents. And I personally have never been in an earthquake. And if anybody here has, please, has anyone? That's a question I have. Has anyone experienced an earthquake here?
I absolutely have.
So for those of you that have ever been in an earthquake, did you ever hear or feel something on a very low resonance versus when it hit or after it hit? Like, I guess, did your senses become raised prior to it happening? And did you hear it or feel it in any way prior to the actual main jolt? Does that make sense?
I can't say that I did. No, I didn't get a prior sense.
Okay. I know when
the big one that I experienced, I was in high school, and I tell you what I did experience. I was standing at the end of a long highway, and I saw it was between classes when it started, and this was in Alaska, so these are big quakes.
Mm-hmm.
And you could look down the hallway and see, it looked like everyone, probably 50, 60 kids in a long hallway standing on a waterbed, because you could see the waves. You could literally see their heads bobbing up and down like a wave.
Wow.
Going through us. And it was physically visual. You could see it was going, the wave was slow enough that you could actually see it look like they were standing on a waterbed. That was a profound experience for sure.
Wow. That's awesome.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy.
I've always heard the other animals, you know, that have more sensitive hearing and senses than us usually know, and they run away, and the birds, you know, fly off, and the animals run from a pending earthquake that's about to happen. I've seen that, but I've never experienced it in person, so that's why I wanted to ask you guys.
I'm not sure the only earthquake I've ever experienced was in Northern California, and I woke up to it in the middle of the night, and the whole house was rocking, like the chandelier was rocking back. It felt like we were like on a waterbed, like at that time, like we were like rolled out of bed, and then the whole place was rocking, and then it stopped. You know, the sloshing. I was like, what was that? And the people that I was with were from California, so they were more familiar with what was going on. And I'm not from California, so I was a little taken aback by it, you know.
That's so good. Oh man. So buddy, what you're showing right now, I love seeing these still motion frames, because to me I'm seeing it follow that hexagonal pattern, especially right there where you see that pinch point when it's a single bolt, and it seems like it's moving in a rotation. We're just seeing it from a side view, but I guarantee if we could see it directly looking up or down, I bet it's moving in that hexagonal pattern.
Yeah, there's
let's see here. What
cylindrical cymatics.
Yeah. Kind of, I guess, even following that 369 pattern, if we could follow it looking down the bolt.
Well, I was going to prepare some stuff. I've been briefly, I briefly showed some of this maybe last year or the year before, but I have this caliper that measures the golden mean.
Mhm.
And I take the golden mean caliper and I put it up against all the branches from all of the stuff that I electrocuted.
Oh,
And then I go outside, and it's perfect weather to do it today, and I take my golden ratio caliper to all of the branches of the different trees that I see. So as above, so below.
yes.
And every single freaking branch is the golden mean, dude.
Yes.
This from right here to here to here is the golden mean. Boom, boom, boom. Let me get my caliper. I usually always have one with me within reach. Where do you be at?
I love it.
You got to have the golden mean caliper for everything.
Did you say looking down the lightning bolt from like follow that? I
From
never
above.
even. This is why I hang out with you guys.
Yeah. So
like visually, that is an amazing idea. Go ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So Michael, my idea, and it's funny, I drew it in my I have a sketchbook that I see something in my head and then I'll draw the diagram of what the circuit looks like or how I would set up my experiment. And I have it. I should take some photos of it and share it with you guys. But my idea was to take my microscope, which I just got a brand new microscope. So if I fry my old one, I don't care. So I'm going to do this now, where I'm going to take my microscope and try to attach an electrode that is, let's say, a metal straw, and aim my microscope down the center of it and maybe cut the straw really short and have it where it's going to arc to another electrode through a gap, but to where I can film the
Use glass. Use a glass tube.
Oh, that's smart. So my idea is I want to capture a microscopic view straight down the arc discharge from one electrode to another. So
Dude.
essentially I need to put the microscope inside of one of the electrodes so that I want to film motion.
Yeah, you could totally do it. I see what you're saying. And you could even get I don't know, if you could access someone with a slow motion camera, because that's what you're going to need.
Yes.
That kind of frames.
Yeah, I need probably at least 1,000 frames per second. I think mine is like it's not very good. So
yeah. But hey, my other idea is nested concentric glass tubes with a larger charge from further away from the conduit, so that it has room to exercise both cylinders.
All right.
And then you might get some correlatory, or it might just use the center tube, might use the out, but you wouldn't be able to see the charge, would you, moving through it? You would need, what would you need? You would need a wooden tube.
Or a copper tube.
No, you wouldn't be able to see the charge in a copper tube either.
Yeah.
You would need.
I want to capture an arc, like because I want to capture. My idea is I want to see the center inside a lightning bolt. So,
right.
To me, if I'm just arcing through the natural air, I want to be able to recreate that, and then even put a mist and make it a very humid environment and try the same thing to see, simulating what's going on in an electrical storm. Anyhow, these are just ideas I'm sharing with you that is making me think of something I did a while back on paper. Hey, perhaps I'll do that soon too. I'll try that. That second image is kind of what I was imagining too. That second from the bottom image, kind of seeing a straight down cross section shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like would the arc filaments rotate in that same fashion? Is my thoughts.
Well, if you take what Donald Scott said about the Dougherty set, which I can email you his email. I can forward it to you.
Oh, please.
The direct email. he said that my set validates his model and goes on to further show the intricate detail that his model predicts. So it goes into further detail on his model. So if you take what he said, then the cross section of lightning should look similar to something like this.
Okay.
The cross section of a lightning bolt.
If I was looking down the filament.
Yes, down. It's identical looking outwards as it is looking down the center. Identical geometry.
So
yeah,
buddy. So that again, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent. The Native Americans talk about the four winds and how each direction was a different color.
Yes.
And I kind of see that in your drawing there, and that's the four rivers, the four brothers, the four ways. I mean, there's all kinds of different similarities.
The New Jerusalem talks about the three gates to the north, the three gates, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. There's three gates to each: north, south, east, and west. Yeah. And this is the New Jerusalem. This is the geometry that they're explaining inside of Revelation, and it's a geometry for whoever wants to take it for what it is. Donald Scott validated it as a Birkeland current. Here's the blue whirl inside of it, but that's neither here nor there. So if you want to take what he says, which I believe Don Scott knows exactly what he's talking about, this is the concentric tubes, the nesting, and predicts the behavior of species, the behavior of lightning, plasmoids, why the Earth is at a certain position and has a certain wind to it. If the Earth were to be this green spot right here, there's your magnetosphere, the magnetotail.
Yeah. Huh. I love it, man. Well, you guys have inspired me to do some things that were only thoughts before. So
we can do this stuff. It can all be done on a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, man. That's what I'm saying. You can explain it on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. You don't need all sorts of other stuff. And that's why, in a lot of regards, the pen is mightier than the sword.
Yeah. Well, I want to make an electric sword. That was an analogy, but you got it.
Oh yeah.
Both is good. Both is always good.
All right. And I love y'all's straw ideas. Michael McDuffie, is that a real straw?
Where you at?
No, it's a microtubule.
Oh, that's just a graphic image.
It's your brain.
Yeah, it's a microtubule.
Consciousness.
It's a hair. When you're talking about tubes, I was thinking in terms of how electric currents might travel through microtubules. So I just Googled an image of microtubules just to be cool.
Dude.
And awesome. Consciousness and brains, neural fibers, they suppose, a lot of the theorists suppose that it works like this.
All right. I love it.
This is the kind of shit that happens when we get together. It always blows my mind every time.
Where thoughts have us, because we don't have.
I wonder what a silicone tube would do.
Well, there's a book one of my viewers recommended I get, and I'm halfway through it, and it's called Egregores, and it is when people get together in some sort of experience and share something greater manifests, and it's more so thought. So it's why people go to church and say they feel the spirit, because people become on the same wavelength, right?
Yeah, the Bible has a concept as well. It's when two or more are gathered, there shall I be.
Yeah. So it's
the same thing. It's the meeting of the spirit. It's what we do.
Current, baby.
That's what. But see, here's
circuit.
what's interesting. This is kind of my little interest area. This is why this is so. One of the reasons why we get so excited about these epiphanous moments that we have when we come together is because our society actually denies them to us. We're not getting them in our lives because we're so detached and we're so disconnected. Not just from and I don't mean like the internet isolates us. I mean like the scientific theory and our culture, everything is dead-ended. All of our science, all of our greater thinking is been co-opted and dead-ended. If you look at all the major sciences, medicine, all of them, there's all this sort of like weird sort of backwoods path that wisdom has taken. And so this is why citizen science is such like my flag wave, like the fact that we get out there and we just ask questions. This is the nature of man. This is what we were meant to do. But in the society that we live in now, it's no longer expected of us. We're now told to shut up and eat our hamburger because the TV show's about to start. Because that's really what we're supposed to be doing. And so when you talk about staring down the shaft of a lightning bolt, what you're telling me is that you think three-dimensionally and in a multiverse way, that you have the capacity to think, I guess for lack of a better term, outside the box. And that's what excites me about people who are involved in electric universe theory, like Buddy, who are so inspiring, because these people are just incapable of thinking inside of a box.
Yeah. Well, I
anti-authoritarian, man.
And I've been
Anarchy.
kind of a loner, and so I'm not having had access to people who think like you for so long. I just get like so excited. I mean, every time I have one of these meetings, these Skype meetings, I have to take a nap when I'm done. Because it's just, I'm overwhelmed, and so I try to reproduce these things in sculptures and stuff, and that synthesis is intense. And every time I look at Buddy's work, I have to fucking smoke a bowl or something just to calm down.
They need to legalize it, Texas, I'll say.
Texas is awesome.
I do love Texas, but there's some things I would like to change. But I appreciate you calling that out, Michael. I guess I do think differently. My wife's been trying to get me to come around, and I think I finally did. I grew up with Tourette syndrome. If you guys are familiar with that, so I've got involuntary body tics and vocalizations that I've learned to control as I've gotten older, but it still exists. And medicinal is the only thing that I've found out of anything out there that actually helps.
That's clinically well proven.
Yeah, and so my wife brought to me our issues, deal with how I treat her. But she's made me realize I believe I may have ADHD, and my brain is scattered-brained all the way through work and through my relationships. And I'm actually going to get tested at the end of the month. So if there's a component to that, maybe we should look for more ADHD people to help our research.
I have diagnosed dyslexia, and I have a theory about that as well. But you said that you changed a lot over the last year. Are you touching on some of those changes now with respect to your?
Yes, with me looking inward and addressing the things people have been trying to give me feedback on that I just didn't want to accept. So, and part of it is also just me being myself and expressing my real thoughts and feelings to everyone around me, specifically my friends and family. But because I've kept a lot of my upbringing and experiences private for fear of going against the grain, but the electric universe kind of helped support all of my thoughts, even growing up in the religion I did, and the changes I went through when I had some severe family issues that changed my complete thoughts on that religion. And the electric universe theory tied all of that stuff I grew up with together, but then took me into the worldview of religion and culture. And I guess my attention disorder allowed me to be able to randomly on the fly be able to look at multiple things and have a generalized comparison. And the more and more I found information that matched something on the complete opposite spectrum would then give me an idea to go look at something else. And then I started meeting more people that, like you guys, that share the same things I have. So
that think like that.
yeah, so it's a group effort. So I guess you know, I haven't really shown my face to a lot of people because I've been hiding from the world. But I don't want it to be about me, because everything I'm doing is because of others' influence. So I don't ever really want to take credit for any of this stuff. Even my experiments, I might be the person doing it, but I wouldn't be doing it without guys like Buddy, for example, or Heather's feedback, or Neil Thompson, or Andrew Hall, and Michael Steinbacher, and you know, all of these people that have influenced me. It's not my work. It's everybody's work in this this theory that we're trying to uncover and figure out. So I want to
see the next phase for you, if I may interrupt. I'm sorry to take too much, but the next phase for you is when you find that there are people who admire you and follow you, and whose lives have changed as a result of your work. That's going to be quite an interesting
that's
thing.
me.
That's what you need to talk about.
I am one of them, and I'm sure a lot of the other the electric view fellows can speak the same.
Can I say something? Can I speak to what you just said, David?
Yeah.
For just a second. First of all, I want to thank you for being open and honest and forthright. Okay, because I think that a lot of the issues, like the greater front we face, is authenticity, right? Because I mean, it's the common thread through what we say we stand for, right? We want authenticity in science. We want authenticity in information. We want authenticity in history. And so we have to demand that authenticity from ourselves as well, which means that taking that moment and acknowledging yourself is a very, very healthy thing to do. And I also think that people because I think that we all share some commonality in that we are abstract in our thinking, and that abstraction makes it difficult for people who are more linear to, or we'll just say linear versus abstract, okay? But it makes it a little bit more difficult for them to follow our line. And it wasn't necessary for them to, because through our abstraction, we are able to make connections that maybe wouldn't have been seen otherwise.
So true.
Can I use one of those?
What?
Sorry, I was going to use one of those abstractions, but keep going.
Well, I think that it's brave. It is a really brave thing to step up and say and do and come to us with, and it shows trust in our community that you can be your authentic self with us, and that we should demand that of ourselves as well. And that's how everything is going to move forward and make the authentic change, because if it's frivolous and it's artificial, it won't have it won't be real to the real, and real recognizes real, and real knows what real is, and that's what the firm foundation will stand on. So it would just thank you. Yes, see, here you go. Thank you for being a good example, and for being there for us, and for showing us that we're not the only ones who feel this way, and that it is capable. We are capable of changing ourselves, and through that, we're gonna change our future. So thank you very much for what you just said.
Amen. I appreciate you guys. It's
been a lovely conversation.
Yeah, you've changed a lot of our perspectives and shown us what's possible just by being persistent. You're very professional at what you do, and I'm a little bit more laid back or whatever with my approach, but you apply a level of integrity that's there, that needs to be there, that I see other people not approaching and using. So that's also another, you've done some Thunderbolts videos as well, correct?
No, I've not been on the Thunderbolts yet.
Okay.
I say yet as I would like to be, but no, I haven't.
I thought that I heard you on one of them.
Kronos had me on for an interview. Greg J had me on for an interview, and the Electric View, and then now you. That's the most exposure I've gotten aside from my own channel or on the Facebook groups.
Which we can find you at Electric Universe Eyes on YouTube. Any other platforms that we can find you at?
Yep, I've got Electric Universe Eyes on Facebook, and let's see here, Electric Univ Eyes on Twitter, which I don't participate in Twitter too often. So really, my YouTube channel is the conduit for everything, and I will occasionally post things on the Facebook thing too. So YouTube's my main conduit right now.
Nice. We'll have that in the links, and we could continue with our conversation if we'd like. I don't know how everybody's feeling. I'm pretty open with my time. I don't know how your time is, David.
I've probably got another 5 or 10 minutes. My 2 kids are sitting outside. I'm ignoring them.
Yeah, I got to do the chicken noodle soup thing too.
Yeah, so I probably myself would be bowing out here shortly.
All right, guys. Any closing remarks? I think next week we're gonna touch a little bit on lightning, and then hop into Eric Lerner's model, his galactic model, which is also similar to Hans Alfvén's model of the electric circuit and the solar circuit. So we're gonna see how those connect, and I'm super stoked because I know that I'm sniffing, I'm on the scent of something just like what we have today. This awesome information that was so eloquently delivered to us from David here and the collective group. Anybody got? We went through all the pictures. I guess we can.
Maybe at some point, I think it'd be cool to hear about Schrödinger. Yeah, Schrödinger. Yes.
Vortex dynamics. Yeah.
Yeah,
so we'll do a whole
about logging and rivers and whatnot.
Yep. We'll definitely do a whole episode on river dynamics, vortex dynamics, what keeps a system alive, what keeps the system flowing, opposing spiral vortex dynamics of Walter Russell, and how that ties into Keeley, Warhol, and Schauberger, and Russell. If I didn't already say Russell. So thanks for being here, everybody. This would not be possible without all of us being our authentic and real selves. I like where this conversation has gone, and there's plenty more to have.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for.
All right, guys. Thank you. See you guys next week. Have a good weekend.
All right, you too.
You too.
All
right. Bye.
All right. What an episode. Special thanks to David Brown. Going out of his way, making it such a great episode and unearthing wonderful information. Excited to see next week where we dive into, well, you heard where we're going. See you there, as usual. The geometric view is love is watching product. Love is watching production. Thank you for doing that. Executive producers of the Geometric View are Buddy James and Brighton Cotter. Music is by the acronym Beauty, the acronym BUD, and Abyssal Dionysus is the geometer. That's me and Brighton. Thank you for being here. Catch you next Saturday.